Those who have eyes, let them see. Those who have ears, let them hear. Those who have guitars, let them chug! Kia ora koutou. Hello everyone. No mai, haere mai ki te Musomancer's Lair. Welcome to the Musomancer's Lair in sunny Aotearoa this August day, probably, depending on the scheduling. I'll get my my manager to sort that out. Jim Keltenhausen behind the scenes. Today in the Church of Chug, we're here looking at Max Headroom. So each amplifier is different, right? Just like every person is different. Just like Troy Kingi is different every time he does an album. Troy Kingi. So with something like the Marshall over here, I've got the gain turned up. It's got a separate volume and a separate gain so that you can turn the chug up. It's basically got a chug control, more gain. That also affects the EQ a little bit. It makes it a little bit more bassy if you turn the gain up. So you have to bear all this in mind. And depending on what guitar you're playing through it, like the Turkbeycaster in behind is lower output, so it's not as chuggy. You can turn the gain up to compensate for that somewhat, or you can put some pedals in front of it. It changes, right? And if you take that out of this room into a venue and you turn the master volume up, you'd think we'd just increase the volume of everything, right? But it also sometimes changes the EQ response and even the gain. So that's why valve amps are awesome, but also you have to know how to use them. And I've sold ones in the past thinking they didn't do what I want because I didn't know how to use the volume knob, the tone knob on my guitar, and all the knobs on the amp, and how they interact with pedals. So like one time I was at a gig thinking I was all trendy and cool, I'll use my 13 watt funky old valve amp, even though my cousin Flame, this was with the Flannels over in Wongadongas, he had a 100 watt amp, so like you'd think there was no way I'm going to keep up with that with a 13 watt amp, eh? But actually, because I was playing mostly lead lines and I had a overdrive pedal plugged into the front of that amp, the 13 valve watts, they just about kept up with this 100 watt solid state amp. But then what happened is some guy, and I do not allow this, but it was at a bogan party in their backyard and I wanted to get out alive, he said, "You need to be louder, bro," and he leaned down and he actually turned the volume up on my overdrive pedal, but my amplifier was already at the limit of its clean headroom. So you're turning the volume up on your amp and you get to a point where it starts to distort because the circuit cannot be clean anymore, right? It starts to, they're made like that. You want them to go chug. You want them to go. So even on this one here, if I turn the volume down, I'm going to choose an in-betweeny setting on the old pickup selector. It's semi-cleanish, right? And then you might switch to a different pickup and turn up a bit. You can see I'm out of clean headroom now. It's not actually getting much louder, but it's just starting to distort more. Hey, old Pinchy! Yeah, Pinchy's from last time. So that's a good thing. Running out of clean headroom isn't a bad thing. It's a bonus.
It's more chug.
So anyway, this guy turned up the volume on my overdrive pedal, but the little 13 watt amp was out of clean headroom, so it didn't get louder, it just got more distorted. And he couldn't figure out why turning the volume up didn't make the overall sound louder. That's why, it's all about clean headroom. So each amp's going to be different in combination with different guitars, different effects pedals. So you have to try all those things out. So now you've got an excuse to buy effects pedals and get chuggy with it, right? Whoa, 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 whoa. Hey, everybody, calm down, keep your pants on, etc. Something this clown hasn't mentioned yet is the difference between preamp clipping and power amp clipping. So in the Marshall, the gain, let me just get this here. Yeah, the gain is your preamp gain. Yeah, and that's the bit that gives you the
Chug.
And then the volume is for the overall loudness, the overall volume of the amp. So you set your
Chug.
However you want it, which is obviously 100%, 110, 120% maybe, and then the volume for how loud you need the amp. And on that clip before, when this guy was playing his blue guitar and turning the volume up and down on the guitar, that was affecting the clipping or the saturation of the preamp. Getting more chug, less chug. Slightly cleaner, not as clean. And then on the 13, what guitar example he spoke about, that was a single volume amp. As you turn it up, the power amp starts clipping, which is a whole different deal. It's a bit more raspy, a bit more fuzzy. It's weird, it's cool, I like it. It's just different, right? And then the other heretofore unmentioned option is solid state amps such as the PV Bandit, which has a clean channel, a dirty channel, a boost. On the dirty channel, you can set the chug how you like it. You know you like it. And then volume up and down, just like on the Marshall, but it's maybe, subjectively, a little less organic, a little less malty or fruity or grapey on the back of the tongue. What do you think, James? Yeah, he liked Marshalls, but the thing is, there's all these options, and the PV Bandit is an eminently giggable amp. It's great fun, and I've recorded with it, and I'll tell you what, it's gone chug, chug, chug. So there's all these different options out there to suit you, to suit your budget, to suit what you're playing. Get in amongst it, and I'll chug you later. So try out a whole lot of different amps. When you're going to buy an amp, first figure out what guitar you're using it with, what band you're using it with most, what kind of songs you want to play, who else is in the band, how do they play, how loud are they, what kind of venues are you going to be at. That all adds into telling you what amp you should buy, okay? And it probably means you're going to need 10 amps. I won't lie to you. So go and have fun. Chug you later. Ha ha.